We used to have this saying called operator error. That meant a person could be on a computer test bed for, say, 3 months. And then one day you walk over there, boss says, go over and see him. His test bed ain't working right. And you go over there, and in this case, it was a power supply load box. And my friend Steve Carney built it. And none of the power supplies the guy was repairing were passing on it. And it has a meter on. You put the power supply, you throw a switch, and the power supply would shut down or blow a fuse, and you're like, what the hell's going on? So you go get a power supply that's come back for credit. You put that on, it does exactly the same thing. So I said, most likely the power supply load box is bad. Something's wrong with that. So I go up to the engineering room and I get the schematic. I bring it out and I'm laying out, and I'm like, I trace it back to a switch on the front. And I said to the guy, which way is this switch supposed to go? I don't know. You've been on this job for 3 months? Yeah. But you don't know it? I don't know. So what happened was the guy's operating, and then one day, for whatever reason, he's unconscious. He's thinking about something else, and he throws a switch down. Now, when you throw that switch down, that's for a different power supply. It kicks in a different load. So his are all failing because he's got the extra load on there. So I roll the schematic back up, and I go back up to the engineering room, and they said, so what was it? I said, operator error. And they go, what happened? I said, he threw a switch he wasn't supposed to throw. And it's 2 or 3 days. They let him try to figure it out himself. And then they send me over there, you know. But this is the stuff you go through with people. And the other one is I went to school with these really smart guys. They went to a bigger school than I went to, high school. And they were more, they could memorize stuff and repeat it back. And the one guy used to call me up, and he always called me, he'd say, hey, jerk off, like that. Hey, jerk off, what the fuck are you up to? And I would say, what's up? He goes, I built a digital clock. I go, yeah. And he says, when I turn on, it comes up at 12 o'clock. I said, that's correct. I said, is it beeping? Well, why would it be beeping? I said, did you put the speaker on it? Well, no. I said, well, you're building this thing from an IC. Yeah, it was a kit. I said, put the speaker on real quick. Now it's beeping. He goes, what's that? I said, I told you the clock failed. In other words, the power failed. If you turn the power after you set the clock, if you have it in the alarm set for at night, and you're laying there in bed, you're asleep. And if the power should go off and come back on, the clock defaults to 12 o'clock, and it starts beeping. Now, this was the Moztec chip. Mine was a 5250. And that was the company that started selling to the public digital clock chips all in one. They used strobing. They didn't use separate output drivers. A lot of them you could drive the display directly from the chip. So anyway, he buys this kit, back of a magazine, and he calls up, hey, scumbag, the whole thing. He's busting my balls. So now he's got the speaker on his beeping. I said, no. He goes, well, how do I set the clock? He goes, I'm trying to set the clock. I said, you have buttons on the clock? No. Using a jumper? Yeah. I said, well, to unlock the clock, you need to push both the minutes and hours at the same time. Well, why would you have to? Look, I'm telling you what you have to do. So he hooks up 2 switches. It came with the kit. He hooks them up. He calls back, oh, you're a real scumbag. That was it. And he hangs up on me. That's it. I don't hear from him again. So then we had graduated school. We went to Retz together, and his name was Thomas Vodzik. He's dead. So's Toth. The 2 guys I hung with in tech school, they're gone. Everybody's gone but me. So anyway, he calls up another time. Hey, scumbag. Hey, how's it going? Hey, you're an asshole. I go, what's wrong? He goes, I'm an 8-track player here. He says, one of the channels was bad. I changed the transistor in there. And now both channels work, but it won't change tracks. So I said, what are you running it on? What kind of power supply? He goes, I have a good power supply. I said, No, what kind of power supply are you running it on? And he tells me, I said, that's a 1 amp supply. Well, that's all you need. No, that's all you need to make the audio work. But the solenoid to change tracks needs 3 amps. No, wait. Hey, dude, I don't care. I took it apart, the solenoid, and I lubricated it. I put it back there. Yeah, but it still needs 3 amps at 12 volts to pull in and to switch the tracks. So all you have to do is go out to the car and put the thing across the battery real quick and just hit your buttons and make sure she changes track. So he hangs up, comes back later on. I get a call. Hey, scumbag, that was it. Fuck you. And then he hangs up. Yeah, that's the kind of guys I had. Now, the last video, I forgot to tell you, the family were all the boys were in some type of computers and stuff and repairs, and they were on the road. I'm sitting there. My mother kept telling me how smart they were. Everybody's always smarter than me, but everybody needed me to fix their stuff. So, so and so. I won't mention this. I won't use his first name. He's so and so wants to know if he can use any color wire and blah blah blah. I said, yeah, that's first hour stuff that they teach you the diameter of the metal in the wire. You know, you got your insulation, you got the metal core, copper core, whatever it is, the lead, whatever you want to call it. It's got to be a certain thickness. That's it. The color of the wire, you can cheat if you need. He's putting a tape deck in the car, and he needs like 8 more inches to go up onto the dash because he ran the wire the wrong way. I won't go into that. But anyway, so I'm telling my mother, and she calls up and tells him he does it. I still have to go over there. He's smarter than me. They're all smarter than me. They all make more money than me. I go over there. He stripped the wires back and used tape. He didn't even twist the wires really well. So I went over there and I came back home, got my solder iron, and went back over there. Back in those days, they used a solder gun, 2-position solder gun. Look it up, Weller. It actually looks like a gun. And I soldered each wire, and then I put shrink tubing on them. And I used to use the heat from the soldering gun to shrink the shrink tubing. Later on, I bought a heat stripper, Black & Decker heat stripper, and that's what I use. I think I still use that. I still got the Black & Decker heat stripper for stripping paint. That's what I use to shrink tube. And then in the background here, see if it's in the frame, that unit is for desoldering ICs. That blows hot air. You can use that for small diameter shrink tube. But for the big stuff, I use it's a paint stripper. Works really well. You can go buy the, now I'm going to forget the name of the company. Ungar? No. It was in red and it had the, well, anyway, we had heat strippers at work. And I used to rebuild those. I used to change the element in it. Because guys would turn it on, leave it on to heat their area. And then they would pick the thing up and drop it and it would break the element. I was the repair guy. You know, the stuff when it would back up in the parts room, the one boss would bring it out. I won't imitate his voice, but he would bring stuff out for me to repair. I actually did scope probes. We found out the Tektronix scope probe, the little tip breaks off, but there's actually a tool you put on the end of the soldering iron. You push it in, and it melts this thing. You pull it out, and then you have a new tip you put into the cylinder. Go look that up too. But that's all the things I used to do. Because the boss one day goes, you know, those scope probes, they're like $75 each. And I'm like, holy shit, really? And we had one guy who used to twirl them. As he's talking to you, he'd sit there and twirl them, and then put a break in the middle of the lead. And then, oh, what a pain in the ass that guy was. I won't mention him or his name. But, yeah, I was constantly, besides doing all my repairs and everything, and taking people to the medical center when they would shoot themselves in the eyeball with a rubber band. I was the only person the bosses trusted to take someone to the medical center. Because the guys I took, they wanted to go shopping or something afterwards. I go, no, we're going back to work. I got stuff I got to do. You know, I don't know what you do there, but you shot yourself in the eyeball with a rubber band, and we were taught how to shoot rubber bands, believe it or not, at work. And if you put it up to your eye, and you shoot yourself in the eyeball, it shoots back or breaks, you're fired. So these guys knew when they shot themselves in their eyeball because they didn't shoot it the right way. I know it's stupid, isn't it? But the bosses decided that rather than fire everybody, start telling everybody you shoot the rubber band from your hip, and that's the proper way to shoot a rubber band at work. All our travelers and paperwork had rubber bands on them, so it's inevitable someone's going to shoot one at someone else. And they said, we just don't want you putting it up to your eyeball and then pulling it back and having it pop back or break or snap and hitting the eyeball. If we find that out, you're fired. But anyway, so I was the guy that took people when they hurt themselves. It was just, I was in charge of possible basically safety. And I remember the one boss, I wanted one of them step stools. You can kick it along. The wheels go up. The wheels come down. As soon as you step on it, the wheels go in. And this guy said to me, are you happy now, baby? I put in for it. I said, we really need one. The guys are getting hurt over there. They're standing on chairs. And he actually said to me, I could tell you the guy's name. I check every so often to make sure if he's dead yet. But he got fired. He was such a bullshit artist. He moved all the workers around, and we would get behind, and then he'd write it all up and become a hero. He would cause the problem, then fix the problem, and write it up. And after he was gone, the secretary came up to me, and she's just letting loose. She said, that guy never did a damn thing here. All he did was cause a problem, fix the problem. And the last problem he caused, I won't tell you why, because he would sue me. The last problem he caused, he couldn't fix. I won't tell you why, but anyway, he got fired. He was covering up, and the cover-up's always worse than the crime. But yeah, I went through a lot. But I just wanted to tell you, save your wires. The color doesn't matter, but in other words, the color of the wire, if you're professional, a lot of times you want black for ground and red basically for the plus. And then if you got a higher voltage, a lot of times red would be 5, and then you make a yellow 12, something like that. Just keep the standard on your equipment that you build. You don't want to, and then some people, they put the wires backwards. I went through that with guys. I told you my uncle, he had got a new truck. He was a truck driver. And he insisted that the wire, you didn't have to flip the switch on the radio. The radio it was either positive or negative ground. And I kept begging him to ask somebody at work. And then my mother in front of him, kept saying, I thought you knew how to fix this stuff. Yeah, my mother would belittle me any chance she got. And finally, he went to work. He asked one of the younger guys, and the younger guy says, yeah, it's a new truck. It's negative ground. See, some old trucks were positive ground. And he would put the radio backwards on the new truck. And it blew out a bunch of crap. It was like $8. He blew it out like 4 times. $8 worth of my money into it 4 times. Didn't pay me nothing for fixing it. And one other time he came to the house, and I said, this is the last thing I'm fixing for you. I found out through my uncle, he was in business working with TV repair shop with my dad. He also worked for Admiral. He says, your uncle there, that's not his stuff. He's bringing stuff home from work, and you're fixing it for free. And he's getting favors. I said, how do you know that? He says, he pulled the same shit on me. And then when I told him I knew what he was doing, he never bothered me again. It's just, that's what you get. That's what you get. And the one time I'm putting a dial cord on, I told you I had to buy a roll of 50 feet, 25 feet. And I asked him for some money to pay for the dial cord. He goes, well, how much could that be cost? You got a big roll. I said, I have a whole roll just to put this in your door. And I found out that radio wasn't his. So whatever the roll of dial cord is, it was never cheap. Trust me. Oh, and as it sits there, the fabric it's made out of dial cord. It's got a cord that goes through it. The outer fabric it dries out, or you get a roll that's really old to start with. That's another story. Unbelievable. See, when you deal with people, you want money. You got to ask for money up front. And then he actually said to me one time, the truck driver, well, you're still learning. I'm like, I'm not. I'm working F-14 stuff. I'm like, You know, I said, maybe you're, you know, I didn't want to insult him because I had manners. Let's put it that way. I didn't talk like a trucker. I do now. I think that's it. All right, that's it.